The city was alive with lights and shadows. Neon signs flickered in the rain, painting the streets with colors that never looked real. Airships moved above the tall buildings like silent sharks. People walked fast, heads down, lost in their own digital worlds. And somewhere between the noise and smoke, a man named Alan Reed walked alone. Alan was once a soldier, a hero of the Orion Wars. Now he was just another face in the crowd. He had seen enough blood, enough death, and enough lies to last a lifetime. He wanted peace, but peace never wanted him. So he wandered from one city to another, from one night to the next, searching for something he couldn't name. That evening, he entered the Galactic Bazaar. It was a strange place, part market, part nightmare. You could buy anything there, from alien spices to black market weapons, from robot limbs to cloned pets. The air smelled of oil, smoke, and greed. Alan wasn't looking for trouble, but trouble had a way of finding him. As he walked deeper into the market, he heard whispers. Fresh alien meat just arrived. Rare species, a deep voice said. Alan stopped, confused. Meat? Rare species? That didn't sound right. He followed the sound through a narrow alley glowing with red light. At the end of the corridor, a metal door stood half open. Inside, a few men laughed loudly. Their voices cruel and careless. Alan stepped inside and froze. There, in the center of the cold room, was a glass tank, and inside that tank was a living being. A young alien girl, small and fragile, with silver blue skin and eyes that glowed softly like stars in water. Around her neck was a tag, a price tag. 2,000 credits, the tag read. Alan's stomach turned. The merchant noticed him and grinned, showing golden teeth. Beautiful, isn't she? He said. Fresh catch from the outer rim. Good quality meat, very rare. Alan stared at the alien girl, her eyes full of fear and confusion. She was alive, breathing, crying silently. This wasn't food. This was someone. Alan clenched his fists. She's alive, he said quietly. The merchant laughed. Of course she is. That's why she's valuable. Alan felt anger rise in him, the kind he hadn't felt in years. He had seen monsters in war, but this was worse. He looked again at the girl and their eyes met. Something passed between them, not words, not sound, just understanding. She wasn't human, but she was innocent. And she was begging for help without saying a thing. Let her go, Alan said, his voice low and calm. The merchant blinked. What did you say? I said let her go, Alan repeated. The laughter stopped. The men around the room turned toward him, hands resting on their weapons. The merchant stepped closer. You want her? You can buy her, he said, smiling again. Alan reached for his credit chip without thinking. He didn't care about the price, he didn't care about the law. He only knew one thing, he couldn't walk away. Minutes later, the transaction was done. The merchant handed him the release key. Still smiling like it was all a game, Alan opened the tank slowly. Steam hissed as the glass door lifted. The girl flinched at the sound, curling up in fear. It's okay, he whispered. You're safe now. She looked up at him, unsure, trembling. He wrapped his coat around her, covering her glowing skin. Come on. We need to leave, he said. They stepped out into the rain. The city lights reflected off the wet streets. Alan could hear his own heartbeat louder than the thunder above. He didn't know who she was or what kind of trouble he had just started, but deep inside he knew he had done the right thing. As they walked away, a drone camera turned quietly toward them, recording everything in a dark room miles away. Someone watched the footage on a holographic screen. Target acquired, a cold voice said. Subject Lyra has been taken by a human. Orders were given. Ships were launched and soldiers began to move. Alan didn't know it yet, but by saving one alien girl, he had just declared war on the most powerful force in the galaxy. And the hunt for him had already begun. Rain fell harder. Thunder rolled across the city sky. The alien girl whispered something in a language he didn't understand. He turned to her. What did you say? She looked up, her silver eyes shining. My name, she said softly, is Lyra. Alan nodded slowly. Lyra, he repeated. You're safe now, but deep down, he knew it was a lie. For every step they took, someone was already following. The night had teeth and the storm had just begun. Rain poured over the city like a curtain of fire and glass. Alan held Lyra close, his coat wrapped around her small frame. The night was dark but alive with lights, sirens, and whispers. He moved fast through the crowded bazaar, his boots splashing through puddles. Behind him, mechanical eyes turned red, Scanners locked onto his heat signature. The moment he bought Lyra, alarms were quietly triggered. She wasn't just some alien girl. She was classified property, a stolen subject of Project Eden, a secret government experiment. Alan had no idea, but every camera in the sector was now tracking him. They reached an empty alley, breathing hard. "Are you hurt?" he asked softly. Lyra shook her head, her wet hair glowing faintly under the neon light. "I can walk," she said, her voice trembling but brave. He looked around. Drones hovered above the rooftops. Scanning the streets, he grabbed her hand and ran. They slipped through a half-broken door into an abandoned factory. Inside, machines stood silent like skeletons. Alan checked his wrist device. No signal, no connection. He cursed under his breath. "They're blocking the comms." Lyra looked at him, her silver eyes full of fear. "They will come," she whispered. "They always come." Alan frowned. "Who are they?" "The hunters," she said, "the humans who wear black hearts outside." A siren screamed through the night. A spotlight flashed across the factory windows. "Stay quiet," Alan said, pulling her behind a rusted wall through the crack. He saw 3 armored soldiers with glowing visors. Scanning the area, they carried pulse rifles, military grade. Not local police, not ordinary men. This was something bigger. Alan's soldier instincts woke up again. He watched their movement, timed their steps. He could see how they communicated through silent gestures. He waited for the right second. Then he grabbed a metal pipe from the floor, threw it far across the room. The sound echoed loudly. The soldiers turned, distracted. Alan took Lyra's hand again. "Run," he whispered. They dashed through the back exit, down the slippery street. Drones turned in the sky, locking onto them. Red beams crossed the air like angry snakes. Alan fired his old plasma pistol. 1 shot. 1 drone exploded in sparks. Another 2 followed. Lyra gasped, seeing the bright light reflect in her eyes. "You're a fighter," she said. Almost surprised. "Used to be," Alan answered. "Now I'm just trying to survive." They hid behind a cargo truck as soldiers rushed past. Alan peeked out and saw a transport shuttle waiting nearby. If they could reach it, they could escape the market zone. He turned to Lyra. "Can you run fast?" She nodded. "Faster than fear," she said. He smiled slightly. Even now she found courage. They ran again. Through smoke and flashing lights, bullets of energy tore through the air. Hitting walls and metal doors, Alan fired back, precise and calm. Every shot a memory of the wars he tried to forget. 1 soldier fell, then another, but for every one that dropped, 2 more arrived. Lyra raised her hands, and for the first time her body glowed bright white. The air around her shimmered like broken glass. The ground trembled, and an energy wave pushed the soldiers away. Alan stared, eyes wide. "What was that?" Lyra looked at her hands, confused and scared. "I don't know." They reached the shuttle just as its engines started to hum. Alan slammed the access panel, overriding the controls with his old military code. The door opened with a hiss. "And get in," he said. Lyra hesitated. Looking back at the burning market, Alan grabbed her arm gently. "There's no going back." The shuttle lifted off the ground, engines roaring through the window. They saw the chaos below. Soldiers shouting, drones falling, lights flashing. As the ship rose into the clouds, Alan finally took a breath. Lyra sat beside him, quiet, holding his coat tightly. "Thank you," she said softly. He nodded. "Don't thank me yet," because down below, in a hidden control center, a cold-faced officer watched their escape. "Activate pursuit squad," he ordered. "Target human male. Name Alan Reed. Priority, capture alive." The officer turned toward a dark figure behind him. "She's awake again," he said. The figure stepped forward. It was a woman with silver skin and eyes just like Lyra's. "Then it means," she whispered, "my daughter is alive." The shuttle broke through the clouds, stars shining above. Alan looked out, his face half lit by starlight. He had no idea who was chasing them. He only knew one thing. He had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed, and somewhere deep in space a storm was waiting. Lyra leaned her head against the window, whispering words from her own language. Alan didn't understand, but somehow they sounded like a prayer. He looked at her, wondering what kind of world could create someone like her, and what kind of world would try to destroy her. The ship drifted farther into the night. The stars watched silently, and the universe held its breath, because one human had done something no one ever dared to do. He had chosen kindness over command, and that choice was about to change the fate of 2 worlds. The shuttle flew through the silent night sky, cutting across the clouds like a wounded bird. Alan sat in the cockpit, eyes fixed on the radar, watching red signals blink behind them. They were still being tracked. No matter how far they went, someone was always watching. Lyra sat quietly in the co-pilot seat, wrapped in his coat, her silver hair faintly glowing. Her small fingers played nervously with the edge of the fabric. She looked like a lost child, but her eyes carried the weight of something ancient. Alan felt it every time he looked at her. A strange pull between fear and trust. After an hour of silence, Lyra spoke. "They will not stop," she said softly. Alan nodded. "I know." She looked at him. "You do not know who they are." He raised an eyebrow. "Then tell me." She hesitated, then whispered. "They are the makers of Project Eden." The words echoed inside his head like thunder. Project Eden, a name he hadn't heard since the war. It was supposed to be a myth, a secret experiment to create perfect soldiers, half human, half alien, built for war and obedience. Alan remembered the rumors, the missing soldiers, the unexplained deaths. He had dismissed it all as propaganda. But now it stood in front of him, alive, breathing, and afraid. The shuttle shook slightly as turbulence hit. Alan took the controls and steadied the ship. "Where can we land?" he asked. "There is a place," Lyra said. "A forgotten lab in the old industrial zone. My mother once worked there." He nodded. Setting the coordinates as the shuttle descended, the city lights faded behind them, replaced by endless ruins and mist. They landed near a collapsed building, half eaten by time and silence. Alan stepped out first, scanning the area. No signals, no patrols, just dust and memories. He turned to Lyra. "Stay close." She followed him through the cracked doorway. Inside, they found a large metal door covered in rust and strange alien symbols. Lyra touched the panel and it glowed faintly under her fingers. The door opened with a soft hiss, revealing darkness inside. They entered slowly, flashlights cutting through the dust. Old machines stood broken, wires hanging from the ceiling. Data screens flickered weakly as if waking from a long sleep. Lyra moved with strange familiarity, touching the walls like she knew them. "This place," she whispered. "It remembers me," Alan frowned. "What do you mean?" "My mother brought me here once," she said. "Before the soldiers came, they reached the main lab." Alan powered up an old terminal and began searching the system. Lines of encrypted code appeared on the screen. After a few minutes, he found a file labeled Project Eden, subject L01. He opened it. A hologram projected above the console. It showed Lyra. Younger, surrounded by scientists, beside her was another figure, tall, elegant, with the same silver eyes. Lyra gasped softly. "Mother," she whispered. The file began to play an audio log. "This is Dr. Saris of Project Eden," the voice said. "They are turning against us. They want to use the children as weapons." Alan listened closely. "We created them to bring peace between our species. But the generals want soldiers, not unity." The voice broke with fear. "I am hiding the last of them, my daughter Lyra. If anyone finds this, protect her. She carries the code to save both worlds," the message ended. Silence filling the room again. Lyra stared at the hologram, tears shining in her eyes like tiny stars. Alan placed a hand on her shoulder. "Your mother tried to save you," he said softly. Lyra nodded. "They took her," she whispered. "I saw them drag her away." Alan clenched his fists, anger and guilt mixing inside him. He had fought for the same system that had done this. Now he understood why they wanted Lyra back. She wasn't just a survivor. She was the key. The ground suddenly trembled. Lights flickered red. Lyra turned, her eyes wide. "They found us." Alan drew his plasma pistol. "Stay behind me." Outside, engines roared, and the sound of metallic boots echoed closer. He could see the shadows of armored soldiers moving through the ruins. A loud voice called out through a speaker. "Alan Reed, surrender the asset, and you will be spared." Alan laughed bitterly. "You call her an asset." He looked at Lyra. "We're not surrendering," she nodded firmly, wiping her tears. "Then we fight." Alan smiled faintly. "Now you sound human." She looked at him and said, "No, now you sound like one of us." Explosions shook the ground as drones burst through the walls. Alan fired fast and precise, blue flashes lighting up the dark hall. Lyra raised her hands again, her body glowing brighter than before. The machines froze mid-air, systems failing one by one. Alan stared in disbelief. Her power wasn't just energy. It was something deeper she wasn't built to destroy. She was built to awaken. As the last drone fell, Alan grabbed her hand. "We need to leave," he said. Lyra hesitated, looking back at the flickering hologram of her mother. "She's still out there," she whispered. Alan nodded. "Then we'll find her, outside." The night burned red with fire and light. Sirens wailed across the horizon. The hunt was far from over, but now Alan knew the truth, and that truth was dangerous. Because if the world discovered what Lyra really was, it wouldn't be just one alien they tried to kill. It would be hope itself. The two ran into the night, shadows merging with smoke. Above them, stars watched in silence, and somewhere beyond those stars, a mother was waiting for the child who was never meant to survive. The night sky burned red as explosions echoed behind them. Alan and Lyra ran through the ruins, their shadows flashing across broken walls and firelit streets. Everywhere, the sound of metal wings and mechanical roars filled the air. Drones hunted them like wolves in the dark, their red eyes cutting through the smoke. Alan fired back with precision, his plasma pistol glowing blue, each shot breaking the night apart. They reached a collapsed highway bridge, wind howling through the gaps far below. The ocean crashed against the city's skeleton. Alan looked at Lyra. "We can't stay on the ground," he said. "They'll corner us." Lyra nodded. "There's a spaceport at the eastern ridge," she said softly. "If we reach it, we can leave this planet," Alan smirked. "You make it sound easy." She looked at him with quiet strength. "Nothing is easy when the whole world is afraid of you." They crossed the bridge carefully, the metal shaking under their steps behind them. The sound of engines grew louder. Hoverbikes, fast and deadly, Alan cursed under his breath. "They're close." He pulled Lyra behind a wrecked car, peeking out to see 3 black armored hunters speeding toward them. Their visors glowed crimson, scanning for targets. "Stay down," Alan said. Gripping his pistol tight, the first hunter flew past. Alan fired once. The bike exploded in a burst of light. But the other 2 turned sharply, circling back. One of them shouted through a speaker, "You can't hide, Reed. The girl belongs to us." Alan growled, "Not anymore." He lifted a small metal disc from his belt and threw it into the air. A shockwave pulse erupted, disabling one of the bikes mid-flight. It crashed into the bridge rail and fell into the darkness below. The last hunter aimed his rifle, firing bursts of red energy. Alan ducked as sparks rained down. Lyra's eyes glowed brighter, and suddenly the air shimmered around them. The energy blast stopped mid-air and dissolved into mist. Alan looked at her, astonished. "You did that?" She shook her head slowly. "It wasn't me. It was the ship calling me." The words made no sense. But before Alan could ask, the ground beneath them shook violently. A massive hunter ship descended from the clouds, its engines roaring. Searchlights bathed the bridge in white fire. A voice boomed through the speakers, cold and cruel. "This is Commander Voss of the Dominion Guard. Surrender the alien subject immediately." Alan tightened his grip on Lyra's hand. "Ignore them." "Alan," she whispered, "and they'll kill you." He smiled faintly. "They'll have to catch me first." He ran toward a maintenance tunnel under the bridge, dragging Lyra along. The hunters opened fire, metal shattering, beams slicing through the dark. Alan jumped through the tunnel entrance as the bridge behind them exploded. They tumbled down a long shaft, landing hard in a drainage corridor below. For a moment, everything was silent except their breathing. Alan groaned. "Still alive?" Lyra smiled weakly. "For now." They walked through the narrow tunnels, water dripping from the walls. Alan checked his wrist map. The spaceport was still 5 kilometers away. He sighed. Long night ahead. Lyra looked up at him. "You saved me again." Alan shook his head. "No, you saved me." She tilted her head. "How?" He smiled. "By reminding me what it means to be human." Above them, the hunt continued. Bounty signals were spreading through the net. Alan Reed's face glowing on wanted posters across every screen. Criminal, traitor, alien sympathizer, reward. 100,000 credits. Every mercenary in the city wanted him now. They finally reached the edge of the industrial zone. The old towers opened to the horizon, where the spaceport lights blinked in the distance. But between them and freedom stood an entire battalion of armored soldiers. Alan exhaled slowly. "Guess we'll have to fight through." Lyra's eyes narrowed. Glowing silver like stars ready to burn. "Then we fight together," she said. The soldiers advanced, forming lines, their weapons raised. Alan took cover behind a metal crate, firing carefully. Bolts of plasma tore through the air. Lyra raised her hands, the wind swirling around her. Her energy pulsed through the ground, making the soldiers' weapons short-circuit. Lightning danced across the field, turning machines into sparks. Alan stared. She wasn't just defending, she was awakening. Commander Voss stepped forward, his armor black and scarred from years of battle. "So it's true," he said, his voice echoing through the comms. "You're the daughter of Ceres." Lyra froze. Her heart pounding, Alan shouted, "Who is he talking about?" Voss laughed darkly. "Her mother was a scientist and a traitor. She tried to stop the project, so we erased her." Lyra screamed, a sound that made the air tremble. Energy burst from her body, a wave of white fire sweeping across the battlefield. Soldiers fell, drones exploded, and even the sky seemed to break apart. Alan shielded his eyes, shouting her name, "Lyra, stop!" But she couldn't hear him. Her power was pure instinct. Pain, rage, and loss. Then suddenly she collapsed, her glow fading to a faint shimmer. Alan caught her before she hit the ground, his heart racing. He looked at the destruction around them. Hundreds of soldiers gone, silence everywhere, he whispered. "You're more powerful than they ever imagined." He carried her toward the spaceport gates. The alarms screamed behind him. Reinforcements were coming. He looked up at the sky filled with burning clouds and whispered, "Hold on, Lyra. We're almost there, above the storm." A small ship waited in stealth mode. Inside it, a woman with silver eyes watched a live feed of the chaos. She smiled sadly. "She's alive," she said. And for the first time in years, the mother of Lyra, Dr. Ceres, and prepared to return. The hunt was not over, it had only just begun. The night sky burned with fire as the battle spread across the city's edge. Alan carried Lyra in his arms, her glow fading like a dying star. Every breath she took was weak, yet her heartbeat still echoed with strength. The sound of engines and sirens filled the air. The Dominion fleet had arrived. They were coming for her and for him. Alan reached the hangar gates of the old spaceport. The place was in ruins. Broken ships and shattered glass scattered everywhere. He placed Lyra gently on the floor, checking the systems of a small shuttle. The engine lights flickered weakly. "Come on," he muttered. "Just one more flight," the console beeped. Power returning, but only for a short while. Lyra opened her eyes, her voice faint. "Alan, they are here." He turned and saw shadows moving beyond the smoke, red eyes glowing in the mist, hundreds of soldiers, drones, and one massive warship hovering above. The sky thundered as its cannons charged. Alan clenched his fists. "Then we make our stand." He handed Lyra a small crystal chip glowing blue. "What is this?" She whispered. "The last message from your mother," he said. "I copied it before we ran." She looked at him, confused. "Why give it to me now?" "Because you need to live," he said softly. "And I need to make sure you get that chance." Outside, the soldiers moved closer, weapons ready. Alan stepped out of the ship, his pistol in one hand, a detonator in the other. He shouted into the night, "You want her? You'll have to go through me." The commander's voice echoed from above, cold and confident. "You're only human, Reed. You can't fight a fleet," Alan smiled bitterly. "Watch me." He opened fire, bright flashes cutting through the darkness. Each shot precise, each move full of purpose. He moved like the soldier he once was. Faster, sharper, unafraid, explosions rocked the ground. Drones fell, soldiers scattered. But there were too many and his weapon overheated. Lyra crawled to the edge of the shuttle. Her hands shaking, she could see him surrounded. Energy bolts flying everywhere. Tears filled her eyes. "Alan, stop," she cried. He looked back and smiled. "No one's dying today. Not if I can help it." He pressed the detonator. A ring of fire erupted around the spaceport. Blocking the soldier's path, Alan ran back to the ship, bullets and plasma bursts chasing him. He reached the ramp and fell beside Lyra. Blood running down his arm, she grabbed his face, tears falling like silver rain. "Please don't," she whispered. "You saved me. Now let me save you." Her body began to glow again, brighter than ever. The ship's panels lit up as her energy connected with its core. Alan tried to speak. "Lyra, no," but it was too late. The ship lifted into the air, powered by her light. The warship above locked weapons, preparing to fire, and then from the clouds came a thunder that shook the stars. A massive alien cruiser emerged, dark silver and alive with energy. Its engines roared like the voice of a god. Alan stared in disbelief. "What in the—" The screen on the shuttle flickered, showing a familiar face. A woman with silver eyes and calm strength. Dr. Saris. "My child," she said softly. "You found her." Lyra's glow pulsed stronger. Her mother's ship firing energy waves that tore through the Dominion fleet. In seconds, the sky turned from war to light. The hunters burned away, their ships falling like rain. Alan watched in awe as peace finally broke through the storm. When it was over, the cruiser hovered silently above. A smaller vessel detached and landed near Alan's shuttle. Dr. Sarah stepped out, her eyes meeting his. "Human," she said, her voice gentle. "You risked everything for her." Alan smiled weakly. She deserved a chance. Saris knelt beside Lyra, placing her hand on her daughter's chest. Light spread across her palm, and Lyra opened her eyes again. "Mother," she whispered. Saris smiled, tears glimmering. "I'm here." Alan stepped back. Watching them for the first time in years, he felt something he had forgotten. "Peace." Saris turned to him. "You will always be welcome among us," she said. He shook his head, smiling. "I think I've caused enough trouble already." She looked at him kindly. "No, Alan Reed. You reminded us what humanity truly means." The alien cruiser prepared to leave, its engines glowing with soft white light. Alan stood at the edge of the landing pad, wind rushing through his hair. Lyra looked at him from the ship's doorway, her eyes full of gratitude and sadness. "I'll never forget you," she said. He smiled faintly. "Just promise me one thing." "What?" she asked. "Never let them turn you into a weapon." She nodded slowly. "I promise." The ship lifted off, rising through the clouds. Alan watched until it vanished among the stars. The dawn finally broke, light spilling over the ruined city. He stood there alone, wounded but alive. And somewhere in the endless sky, a child he once saved carried his hope to another world. The story of one man who dared to save an alien would echo through time. And in every corner of the galaxy, people would whisper the same words. He was only human, but he changed everything.